On the future judicial review and what that looks like, would the witnesses testify in court, or is it done on the record established by the executive branch, or does that maybe depend?
I would say it depends on what kind of process was provided by the executive. And look, I agree with General Sauer. This court's not going to dictate, like, here's Robert's rules, have at it. But I think this court can do something useful, which is essentially to create an incentive for the executive to provide something that's a little bit more protective, a little bit closer to Taft than something incredibly informal.
That sliding scale is extraordinarily unhelpful. What is the minimum that the executive, in your view, has to provide? The minimum type of hearing that you think is required by this statute?
So the minimum hearing, I think, would have three components. One is notice, and that's really not much of an issue here. I agree with that. The second is an opportunity to provide evidence to the decision maker, and we don't think that happened here. And then the third thing is some effort to keep the final decision maker from prejudging the issue. And part of the problem you have in this particular case is that I think the president was proceeding on the understanding of the statute that's faithfully represented here by the Solicitor General, which is he wasn't acting like a removing authority that was subject to any due process. Because if he were sort of subject to that, he wouldn't have said in his opening tweet, "You must resign," and he wouldn't have said 2 days later, "Resign or be fired."
So does that mean it has to be a body of disinterested decision makers?
No.
People who are not part of the executive branch and can exercise independent judgment that way? No? Then
No.
what does it require?
It requires just what I said: notice, an opportunity to provide evidence, and a decision maker who hasn't prejudged the issue. That decision maker can be the president. I mean, I'm not sure I'd necessarily recommend it as my choice A, but
how can it not be the president? The statute authorizes the president to make the removal decision. How could it be anybody else?
Well, look, I mean, if you believe in the unitary executive theory, then anybody that makes the removal decision is acting on the president's power. I think it would work. I think the way it worked for Taft is the tribunal made a recommendation and then Taft executed.
Right.
So it was the president making the decision.
The president has to make the decision, right? Or delegate it to somebody who he wishes to make that decision,
Yes.
who's reportable to him.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
At will.
At will. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and the president can be the final decision maker, but if he's going to be the final decision maker and there's a due process right, and I mean that statutory or constitutional, then he needs to be a little bit careful and say these are the allegations. He can't start by prejudging the issue by saying resign.
Mr. Clement,